Have you ever thought about how the Reformation affected women? The Protestant Reformation began on October 31st, 1517, or so people say around then, when the German monk and priest Martin Luther began protesting and having some complaints about the Catholic Church. But one thing we don't often hear about with the Reformation is how it affected the lives of women in Christian lands in those days. The author Amy Welborn has an engaging blog and a wonderful series of books for children and young adults. And she writes about this topic in an article that I'll link in the notes of this YouTube video. In that article, she talks about how the Reformation changed life for women in daily lands and daily ways of the Christian faith. Now, one of the things that I'd never really thought about was that for women before the Reformation that were in Christian lands, which were Catholic lands in those days, women had a large variety of things open to them that they could do. A woman didn't just have to be a wife or a mother. A woman in those days, the 14th century, the 12th century, could end up through a monastery, through religious order, being the head of lands. No other woman in those days could own land, but an abbess in charge of a monastery could own and run land, to be in charge of people, to be in charge of farmers, just like a mighty lord in a castle. Truly fascinating. Also, a mother superior of a religious order could run a hospital or run some other organization or institution. But when the Reformation came about, especially in the land of Martin Luther and parts of the northern area of Germany, or Zwingli in Switzerland, or Jean Calvin in France, the lives of women became greatly reduced. And even women that were already in monasteries were forced out of monasteries and forced to find marriages that they didn't want. Under the Protestant view of a woman's life, there's only one thing a woman could be: a wife and a mother. Now, being a wife and mother is a wonderful thing. Amy Welborn, who writes this fascinating historical article, is herself a wife, now a widow, and a mother. But she presents to us the striking idea that for Catholic women, there wasn't just one choice. No, through a religious order, they could have great dreams and do great and amazing things. Think about some of the amazing women religious that we celebrate in our Catholic faith. Women not just in the near time, but women in the far distant past. Women like St. Catherine of Alexandria, who was a martyr in the first centuries of the church. And she was a great philosopher. Or women like St. Scholastica, the sister of St. Benedict, who started a women's branch of his order and was able to impact the lives of women even to this day, some 1600 years later. St. Catherine of Siena, who was a member of the Dominican order. She chastised a pope and told him to act more like a pope. Amazing things that Catholic women have done. Not just being wives, mothers confined to the kitchen, as we might say in modern feminist language, but wonderful and generous lives for the church and others. I hope you enjoyed that fascinating little tidbit about the lives of Catholic and Christian women and how they're affected by the Reformation. Do check out that article that's linked in the notes by Amy Welborn to see her more fascinating, rich details as she goes into those lives of women that were interrupted and deeply impacted at the time of the Reformation. God bless you. Have a great week.